Dr. Ehsan Latif, the Director of Tobacco Control at the Union, is joining me here in studio along with Ann Jones. She's a union consultant. Today we're going to be talking about sustainable funding for tobacco control. Hello.
Hi.
Now let's get right into it. Why is sustainable funding important for tobacco control?
All the public health professionals are always looking for funds to do the activities that they want to do which are effective. And it's not only for tobacco control. The taxes on tobacco can go a long way in supporting all public health programs in the different countries across the globe. And it's a good source of sustainable funding because as we tax the cigarettes more, it has a double edge. It decreases the consumption, yet it helps the governments to fund their healthcare programs.
Now you mentioned tax, and maybe you can tell me about tax and increasing tax. Have you had any pushback from governments?
Look, we get more pushback from the tobacco industry because they are all the time trying to stop any reforms to tobacco tax and also try and stop controls on tobacco. But it's very important for us to keep moving forward because tobacco control is still largely underfunded in many countries, as are a lot of health programs. And yet it's really such a win-win, if we can call it that, because governments, if they use tobacco tax, can reduce consumption, which is often of the leading cause of death and disease, and they raise much needed revenue to pay for what are their major needs in terms of health programs. So it's not just trying to save millions of lives that die each year from tobacco use, but other causes of death and disease.
How do you deal with that pushback from the tobacco industry?
You need to provide the evidence. You need to tell the governments that they are spending more than what they are earning from tobacco taxes because the industry wants to push out cheaper cigarettes. They want to entice the young one into buying them. So if it is expensive, they don't get their proverbial replacement smoker. Because remember, when a person dies, they need another person to take up the habit to keep their market going. So what we do is that we provide the evidence, we do modeling for the governments, and to make sure that they understand how important it is to keep on raising taxes. It's not very popular, but when they have a cause, for example, in Philippines, they wanted to do universal health care, and they wanted the funds to come from their internal resources. So they went out and taxed both alcohol and tobacco products, and they got the money to do universal health care in Philippines.
So it really is offering a benefit in turn for raising taxes in certain countries. What countries are doing this really well right now?
Well, Vietnam is a very good example of a country where we've been working that has recently established a very comprehensive tobacco control law that included the establishment also of a tobacco control fund. And so in their first year, they raised about $14 million to fund their programs. They have a national tobacco strategy, they have a grants program, and they have health goals. And so by working with the Vietnam government, we were able to assist them in developing a really good tobacco control fund, as well as the evaluation and monitoring of their outputs, because in the end they have to prove to government that their fund is effective, and if we can show that and they can show that, then the government is looking down the track to consider other taxes on very unhealthy products. So sugary drinks, for example, is in their radar, and so we have a lot to gain in terms of improving the health of the whole population.
What challenges are you still facing?
There are two things which are really a challenge on the ground. One is that all the data on cigarette sales in the low and middle income countries comes from the tobacco industry itself. The government doesn't have the resource to get its own data, so they are dependent upon the industry. And the second thing is that even when they get the data, there is not sufficient capacity on the ground to analyze it. So the industry can manipulate the system. So that's what the union does. It provides them with the resources and the capacity to gather the data independently, to analyze it, to develop their own models to show how the tax increase will not decrease the revenue, but will benefit them in decreasing the consumption.